This is Betty. Betty sells lemonade. She sells it, people buy it, she makes a profit, makes more lemonade. Life couldn't be any better, but not anymore. Billy sees Betty making a profit. Now Billy wants to join in the market. Betty gets over it. Now Billy and Betty are making profit. Then Belinda sees Billy and Betty making profit and wants to join in the market. So she does. Now we have Billy, Betty, and Belinda. Now all these other firms see Billy, Betty, and Belinda making profit, and they want to join in the market as well. So before you know it, more and more and more and more and more people are going to join. And that's what we call perfect competition. All right, you guys. So today we're going to be talking about perfect competition, which is a really important topic if you are taking a microeconomics class, an AP micro class, or maybe the AP test. Definitely a topic that you are going to want to understand. So today we are going to be looking and trying to understand what is perfect competition, especially in the short run. So we're going to start off by talking about some defining characteristics of a perfectly competitive market. So the first thing that we are going to want to look at is that in a perfectly competitive market, there are many small firms in that industry. So let me just finish writing this down. All right. So in our scenario here, this essentially means that in perfect competition, in the real world, there may be like hundreds or thousands of small firms that usually sell identical products in this given market. So now, obviously, in our example, we didn't have hundreds of thousands, but realistically, there definitely may be, and that's something definitely to keep in mind as compared to different market structures like an oligopoly or a monopoly, where there are usually only maybe like one or even two firms that are essentially kind of dominating the entire industry. So perfectly competitive markets definitely stand out in that way because they have many small firms. Now, another thing that we're going to want to know about it is that in a perfectly competitive market, there are low barriers to entry. So what does this mean? Now, we saw in our video, Billy saw Betty making a profit, and naturally, he wanted to make a profit too. Now, there wasn't too much he had to do. After all, this was just a lemonade stand, resources to, become a lemonade stand. I mean, you or I could become or operate a lemonade stand ourselves. It isn't really too hard to do. Materials needed to operate a lemonade stand, they're easily accessible. So there are low barriers to entry because barriers to entry are like obstacles that can make it difficult for new firms to join an industry and compete with other firms. So a good example is like the De Beers diamonds, right? If you wanted to suddenly sell and manufacture or whatnot like diamonds, you can't exactly do that because you may not have access to the resources or the materials needed to do that because diamonds are like the property or the land in which, you might be able to get those diamonds maybe owned by someone, or you may not have access to it. Really, in the end, all you need to know is that there aren't any barriers to entry or barriers to enter like a perfectly competitive market, right? Billy saw Betty making profit and he just entered it. So that's something you want to know. Now, another factor is that products sold in a perfectly competitive market are identical. So a really good example of this in the real life is agricultural products. For example, like take fruit. So oranges, if you want to buy oranges, there aren't going to be, let's say you go to like Target versus Fred Meyer, all of these stores will have different suppliers for their fruit, but at the end of the day, usually most of the time, they are going to be identical, pretty similar. Like the oranges aren't going to be significantly different, right? So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether you go to one store or another to buy a fruit. They are all essentially the same. With the lemonade stand, it's kind of the same idea. So in a perfectly competitive market, what you need to know is that products sold are identical.